In a perfect world, we would grow and harvest organic food, sustainably and without harmful pesticides. We would rinse them and transport them a short distance away to be consumed with minimal processing before they lose their nutrients. It's the way they do it at Paradise Farms, who supplies fresh produce to local South Florida restaurants.
5 years ago, I purchased Paradise Farms, a well-known organic farm since 1999 in Homestead, Florida, because my whole philosophy is that nature heals.
Paradise Farms owner Carla Dascal says she learned that after battling several chronic diseases.
I'm recovering from a lifestyle of obesity, of diabetes, of chronic anxiety. I was weighing over 250 pounds and all my levels were out of control. In 2005, I had a gastric bypass. They became available, but not right away did I start making the changes. I basically, kept eating the Happy Meals and, doing my thing, but in smaller quantities.
She says the real change came after a yoga instructor introduced her to the healing power of plants, and she began studying.
And really educating myself on a holistic lifestyle, meaning, no medications, whole foods, organic foods.
Looking to see just how much whole, unprocessed plant food we're really consuming daily, I set out to buy lunch specials, not at fast food joints, but at Hispanic restaurants because Latinos, we pride ourselves on eating well. I wanted to see if we were adapting to the standard American diet, low in fiber-rich fruits and vegetables, and high in saturated fat, animal products, and highly processed foods that are loaded with sugar and salt. We took the food to nutritionist Katia Galvis.
So here we have what Hispanics are eating in this country today. This is a typical lunch, what they call completas, a Cuban, a Mexican, and a Puerto Rican. This is what we eat for lunch, for dinner. So at first glance, what do you see?
Large portions and a lot of fat. Unfortunately, we like to add so much fatty ingredients like cheese, cream, everything fried, large portions. And I can see here that the good stuff is just the decoration, right?
She's talking about the veggies and unprocessed foods that only seem to decorate the plate filled with saturated fat, mostly from animal-derived foods. The pork on this plate, for example, not only has high cholesterol levels, but when we consume it, our body produces a substance called TMAO.
Well, this is a compound that is formed when we digest meat. It's mainly in animal products like meat, fish, eggs, and it's very inflammatory. They've seen that having high amounts of TMAOs will increase your risk of cardiovascular disease, even cancer.
What's missing from the plate, she says, are cruciferous vegetables like kale or broccoli that have the opposite effect. Consuming those whole, unprocessed plant foods has been linked to a reduction in inflammation in the arteries. Unfortunately, saturating our traditional dishes with pro-inflammatory foods has become normal.
Unfortunately, we have strayed from our roots. So if we think about the diet of our grandparents or great-grandparents, in various countries, it was rooted in a plant-based menu. So we would consume beans and corn and pumpkin, potatoes. So it was more of a starch-based diet. And with time, back then, animal products were more a commodity, was something that that you wouldn't eat every day. And with time, all of the animal products became more accessible, as well as the availability of processed foods in our diet. And so we have changed the way that we eat.
People come to this country thinking that the abundance and the opportunity, to eat meat and to eat it every day and so cheaply, how would they really now eat beans? I mean, that was what we ate when we were poor. It's only a few years into it that people start to get sick. And by the time that you find out that this food is making you sick, you are addicted to it.
History has shown us changing our dietary habits when we migrate can be detrimental. A study published in a well-known medical journal concluded that when low-income people from South Asia immigrated to Europe and began to consume more fat, animal products such as meat and dairy, and more refined carbohydrates, leaving whole grains and reducing their intake of fiber from plants, they saw an increase in risk of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease, the same chronic diseases that plague Americans.
When we started changing our diet, what happened to us?
So we started to get sick. We started to see the rate of diabetes and heart disease increase rapidly, and we see that now in our children.
According to the World Health Organization, the healthiest diet is mostly plant-based, filled with fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and whole grains, and low in processed and refined foods with added sugar, salt, and saturated fat. But that recommendation is hard to hear when we are bombarded with other attractive messages.
They're offering you $1,000 a day for it's a one-day internship.
What do you have to do?
You have to taste bacon-related menu items, and then you rate each strip of bacon.
I will do it for free.
No.
It is National Hot Dog Day.
Yes.
So,
Wasn't yesterday like National French Fry Day?
Every day is a National Food Day.
Just be aware that people like to hear good news about their bad habits. So many times the media will encourage that type of information.
Lifestyle medicine doctor Eddie Ramirez says we need to be educated consumers when shopping for food.
Search, research, ask the question where things come from. In that way, you're going to be able to be more knowledgeable to take better decisions. Consumer is the one that really can change the tide of things.
It's really a process of deconstructing, of educating and deconstructing, and going against the dopamine, which is the pleasure, that people get when they eat a hamburger or a fried, rib or cheese, which is if they try to eat less meat because they've heard that it's associated with colon cancer, they haven't heard that cheese is bad, so cheese then is into everything. We are really in deep trouble in terms of health and nutrition in this country.
So the first thing that I like to tell everyone that will listen is let's unlearn everything that we thought we knew about eating. Your plate doesn't have to consume animal protein, right? All protein derives from plants.
To understand just how to put together a healthy dish, we went shopping with holistic health coach Carla Salinari and asked her about those lunch specials we thought showcased our Hispanic culture in the U.S.
So how do we compete with these lunch specials that we're used to?
It's important to remember that what brings us back to our culture, our cultural dishes, is the flavor. It's not the unhealthy fat, it's not the animal protein, right? It's the combination of cilantro, peppers, garlic, onions, different types of fruits and vegetables native to the countries where we are. In the way that we cook them is where we can start to get into a little trouble. So if we focus on flavor, right, it is easier for us to be able to put these meals together without the use of any animal protein.
She says when shopping, we should fill our carts with different colors of fresh food because each color has different nutrients, vitamins, and minerals, and focus on what's in season.
There's a reason why we eat in season. Mother Nature takes care of us every season. During the cold months, we have an abundance of squashes, pumpkin, which has zinc in the seeds, right, which protects us against the flu and viruses, very important for the colder and winter months. Then during the spring and summer, we have incredibly hydrating fruits like watermelon and cantaloupe and berries, which are filled with healthy antioxidants.
She not only recommends eating the rainbow, but also eating the different parts of a plant.
If we can stay focused on that our plate needs a healthy variety of roots. So what are our fruits? Our yuca, which is very popular in Latin culture, our potatoes, our carrots, and then we have the stem, which is the broccoli stem, for example, asparagus. These are all delicious fruits and vegetables. Then we have the leaves, which are our dark leafy greens, which contain so much vitamin A plus great amounts of essential amino acids. And then we have the flower, which is the broccoli, the kale. Then, of course, we have our seeds and our fruits and our healthy grains.
She admits at first it may be difficult for us to eat fresh foods because our palates have become accustomed to an overload of fat, salt, and added sugar.
I mean, we crave all this junk food. Why do we crave all that stuff?
So, you know, the human body is made to survive when times are harsh and of scarcity. And so our taste buds look for the sweet taste, or, you know, the fatty foods, because back in the day when we didn't have foods available all year round, we needed to sustain our bodies. So we would go for those high sweet foods and fatty foods to sustain us throughout the scarcity. But now we don't live in a world of scarcity for the most part. So we have an overabundance of foods and of food fragments, because a lot of the things that we find at the supermarket are not really food. They're just processed and things in a box.
One of the exercises that I am very fond of is giving people carrots. Chew. Oh, this is a delicious carrot. Okay, now put it away. Now swish your mouth with a little bit of sugar water. Okay, and then taste the carrot again. And suddenly the carrot doesn't taste the same. This is just a very quick example of how our taste buds can get hijacked by the sugar. But the taste buds can be downjacked if you stop eating the sugar, the oil, and the salt, hyper palatable foods, and start to develop a taste for the natural sweetness, saltiness, and fattiness of the plant foods. It happens gradually, and we have to do it in some sort of organized fashion. But don't throw the towel. Just stick with it.
A quick internet search and I found several easy dressings made with avocado or nuts instead of refined oils, and desserts sweetened with dates instead of sugar.
You first have to know that there's much more food in the plant kingdom than there is in the animal world. Talk to your grandma, or talk to people in your family who used to eat, you know, more from the earth, and try to see if you can make those recipes, but without the meat, cheese, and eggs.
Currently, the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, food guidelines recommend consuming all kinds of vegetables, fruits, grains, oils, and protein. And although they don't specify that protein should be animal-based, they do recommend dairy products.
Sadly, the recommendations, even though they get better every year, because the information about how important and how helpful the plants are in our promoting and maintaining our health, they still add information that's very confusing and very disorienting to anyone who reads the 100-page document.
Dr. Ana Negron says dairy is in there because the USDA has two jobs. It promotes agriculture and tells the population what they should eat, something people like Dr. Negron believe is a conflict of interest.
Many people think that the USDA should be divided into two organizations or two departments, the Department of Agriculture and the Department for the People. It cannot really serve two masters very well. It will serve the master that gives them more money.
And that is?
The agribusiness, the meat industry, the meat and dairy industry, which racks billions of dollars a year to the millions of the plant business.
We asked the USDA why they included dairy in their recommendation if experts say the majority of the world's population cannot digest lactose and it's been linked to diseases, including cancer. They told us the dairy food group is included because its foods provide a range of nutrients needed to promote health, prevent disease, and meet nutrient needs required across life stages. USDA and HHS recognize that a large portion of the population is lactose intolerant or choose not to consume dairy products, which is why the dietary guidelines note that a person can meet their dairy recommendation by consuming low-fat or fat-free lactose-free milk or yogurt or fortified soy beverage. According to the environmental group EWG that gets their data from the USDA, from 1995 to 2020, the government issued $6.4 billion in dairy subsidies, though data shows milk consumption has decreased in recent years. And although the USDA's own nutrition charts show that we can get more calcium, potassium, and protein by eating foods like broccoli, kale, and black beans, they still include dairy in their recommendations.
It's how we know that the industry has maintained a hold into the USDA dietary guidelines, that although every year they get better, they still have too much heavy hand of industry in the recommendations. And I dare say it's one of the reasons why the public and physicians and the scientific community, the healthcare community is still so confused and still ask, well, what about calcium? Where do you get your protein?
Looking to offer another dietary guideline, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has published what they call the Power Plate, a dish they say can lower the risk of many diseases, including obesity, heart disease, cancer, and stroke.
We have 4 main groups of foods. The first one are the legumes. You can see there's so many different kinds of legumes. We have the pinto beans, the black beans, lentils, also garbanzo and the soybeans. This group of food will provide us with protein, a good source of protein, and also fiber. Lots of iron and calcium, which is very important. The next group we have the grains. And you can see different types of rice, quinoa, oatmeal, pasta, bread, tortillas. All these are part of the grain group. This group will provide us with the complex carbohydrates, fiber, minerals, vitamins.
She says it's important to consume whole grains, for example, brown rice and not white, because when grains are processed, they lose nutrients and go from being complex carbohydrates to simple ones that can affect the functioning of the body.
For example, if you take the fiber and all the nutrients out of the grain, your body will process it differently. So when you eat white rice or white bread or white pasta, these will spike your blood sugars.
You should look out for the word whole on the ingredient label. For example, whole grain, whole barley, whole oats, whole wheat. Look out for words like refined or enriched, which means the grains have been processed. The next food group in this dish are the veggies.
It's huge. I mean, and this is just a simple, very small example of the variety that you can find. So I tried to add different colors, different textures, different parts of the plant. For example, we have the leaves. The leafy greens are so important because they will provide us with calcium, iron, and folate. This is the amazing group that contains lots of antioxidants, which are good for us. So try to add all kind of colors, all type of colors, like greens, purple, reds, yellow. So you get more color, you get more antioxidants.
And last but not least, the healthy fats.
All the essential fats like the omega-3s are in these 3 main seeds, like the chia, flax, and hemp. These will provide us with omega-3s, very important also for the kids because they need those for their developing brain. And also they need fat. They need fat to grow and to develop.
Nuts and avocados are also included as healthy fats, and although they don't have cholesterol because that only comes from animal sources, she says adults should consume them in moderation. If you're looking for examples of plant-powered meals, Dr. T. Colin Campbell's Center for Nutrition Studies has compiled a long list of recipes they hope will inspire you to fill your plate with food that is healthy but also tasty.
If we make sure that our plate has rice, we can have some beans, right? Then we can have a salad with some dark leafy greens and seasonal fruits and vegetables.
Something to watch out for, they say, is highly processed vegan foods.
You can have French fries when you're a vegan, so it's important not to lose focus on the difference between the two. Plant-based means just that, focusing on your meals being plants. When you're vegan, then you're just not consuming any animal product.
And if you miss having meat on your plate, she says you can try swapping it out for mushrooms.
In the process of adjusting to this new lifestyle, if you want to have something that the texture simulates some animal protein, mushrooms are an amazing alternative. Why? Because they're meaty in consistency, they hold a lot of flavor, but it's also important to highlight that they're amazingly powerful in boosting the immune system. They have tons of protein and they have tons of fiber as well. So we can start here. Cremini mushrooms are baby portobello mushrooms. It's the same thing at different stages of growth. So these are amazing. You could throw them on the grill. You can use them as a sandwich, and they're a delicious alternative as well. These are king oyster mushrooms. They're an amazing alternative to chicken and fish. For example, you can grab these and slice them up, sear them in a cast iron skillet, and they're similar to scallops, or you can shred them using a fork, and they can be shredded meat, shredded chicken.
So some people say that mushrooms don't taste like anything, tofu doesn't taste like anything.
Neither does chicken unless you season it. So let's open our minds to the possibilities of mushrooms and tofu. All you have to do is season it, give it that flavor, that umami that you love, and then you can introduce them into your meals and incorporate them better.
When seasoning our food, we also have a chance to enhance the health benefits by incorporating herbs and spices.
We have amazing spices available to us, and sometimes we often forget about them, right? Like turmeric and black pepper and cumin and coriander and fennel, which are such powerful aids for our digestive system and our overall health.
When I chop cilantro, I remember my mom.
Absolutely. It brings us back to our culture. It connects us to our roots. It allows us to put cultural dishes on the table, things like parsley, cilantro, dill, scallions, right? So in addition to all the spices that we were talking about before, you can also add herbs as a way to boost not only the flavors of your meals, but also the health properties. For example, cilantro is incredibly anti-inflammatory, as is parsley and dill.
And when we combine different ingredients, we not only increase the variety of nutrients on our plate, but sometimes we might also be boosting our ability to absorb more nutrients.
For example, the iron in plants is better absorbed when you include a source of vitamin C.
She says adding peppers, which have vitamin C, to beans improves the absorption of iron from these legumes.
Plants have some chemicals that will prevent some absorption of some minerals like iron and calcium, but fortunately with some kind of a processing of your food, like for example when you sprout your beans, when you cook them, you will be able to eliminate some of those compounds from the plants and be able to absorb these nutrients.
Those cooking processes, she says, provide health, unlike the methods in which meats are processed to make cold cuts, ham, sausage, and bacon. In 2015, the World Health Organization classified these processed meats as type 1 carcinogens, the same group cigarettes are in. The study says they were classified as carcinogenic based on sufficient evidence in humans that the consumption of processed meat causes colorectal cancer.
When I finished my training.
To understand why what we eat can cause cancer, we turn to Dr. Vanessa Mendez, a gastroenterologist and specialist in lifestyle medicine. She's so passionate about the subject that she gave us an interview while she was awaiting the birth of her youngest daughter.
The microbiome is the hottest topic in health. We have anywhere between 39 and 100 trillion microbes in our gut. And these are composed of all sorts of different microbes, including viruses, bacteria, fungi.
It turns out that our body is made up of human cells and microorganisms. Many of these microorganisms live in our intestine in a colony of sorts called microbiota.
What is astounding about this microbiome is that we are just cracking at the surface of everything that they do in our bodies for us. So they live in symbiosis with us. That means that we benefit mutually from each other. So we host them in our body. So we give them a home, but we also give them food. So what we eat, they eat as well. And in turn, they turn around and provide us with a whole host of functions in the body. And the list grows every year. And the list includes anywhere from metabolic, endocrine regulation, fat deposition. They help protect they're part of the first line of defense against pathogens. So for example, since they live in our colon, they secrete mucus that helps reinforce the colon wall. And the colon wall, if it's not reinforced, it allows pathogens to come in and toxins to come into our body. And why is this so important now more than ever? Because 70% of our immune system is in our gut.
She explains that the beneficial microbes need us to feed them fiber to perform essential functions in our body.
What people don't understand is that when we consume fiber, most of it goes undigested by our entire digestive system until it reaches the colon. And that is the food for the microbes. They take it, they start breaking it down, fermenting it, and in turn, they create these byproducts that one of them is really a gold mine, are called short chain fatty acids.
Why is fiber so important?
We have 5 pounds of bacteria in our gut that depend on fiber for their nourishment, and they pay rent. And the rent they pay is in the form of short-chain fatty acids and other nutrients that really protect our colon cells from cancer and that get absorbed into our bloodstream and do all kinds of beneficial things. No animal has fiber. No meat has fiber. No cheese or milk has fiber. So we depend on plants to give us that kind of nourishment to those 5 pounds of bacteria.
And according to gastroenterologist Dr. Vanessa Mendez, while our bodies produce the enzymes to digest animal products, too much can create inflammation in our body, and the same goes for processed foods.
Processed foods, that's mostly what the Western diet is made of. It's very high in fat, very high in refined sugar, and it's very high in chemicals. So the interesting part for me as a digestive disease specialist is that there's a lot of chemicals in processed foods, such as artificial sweeteners, emulsifiers, that actually act on the gut microbiome and change it to a pro-inflammatory gut microbiome, just like animal protein does.
She says this explains why those of us diagnosed with autoimmune disorders usually have digestive problems.
70% of our immune system is right there in the gut, waiting to attack. If it attacks incorrectly, it attacks out of proportion, then that's when autoimmunity, chronic disease, and inflammation result. We want our immune system to function not too much and not too little, because either way, either extreme results in disease.
She says to have a balanced gut microbiome, we should fill our plates with plant-based foods.
We definitely should have a plant-based or plant-forward diet. It's not feasible for everybody throughout the world to be 100% plant-based. We understand that, we know that, and it may not be realistic for certain people, but definitely a plant-based and plant-forward. What does that mean? That most of your meal should be composed of things that come from nature, that grow from the ground or from a tree. So fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds.
She says to fix our microbiome, we should not only eat a plant-forward diet rich in fiber, but also drink at least 8 cups of water a day, get a minimum of 7 to 8 hours of restorative sleep every night, and at least 30 minutes of exercise 5 times a week.
Exercise has definitely been shown to be incredibly beneficial for the gut, not only for the motility of the gut, its movement, to have bowel movements, but also for the gut microbiome. So exercise has been shown to diversify the gut microbiome. What that means is that diversity equals a more resilient and robust microbiome. More species doing the jobs that we need them to do. The next step is going out into nature. So nature has been shown to have not only beneficial effects on our mental health, but also on our body, and especially for the gut microbiome. When we're out in nature, some people like to call it nature bathing, we are actually grounding, like our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite system as our fight or flight. Our parasympathetic parasympathetic nervous system is in charge of rest and digestion. So we're activating our parasympathetic nervous system through our vagus nerve. We're actually breathing in the microbiome of the natural environment we're in. That's actually making its way into our gut because we swallow air every day.
She recommends at least 2 hours every week of nature bathing. These lifestyle medicine components are the same habits shared by those who live in the so-called blue zones.
All right.
Parts of the world where there are higher concentrations of centenarians or people reaching age 100 in good health. Places like Ikaria, Greece, Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, and Loma Linda, California, the city in the United States where they live up to a decade longer than the rest of us. It's believed the reason for this is that there's a large Adventist community living there. They are vegetarians, exercise regularly, and they do not smoke or drink alcohol.
Blue zone, and what does that mean? Places where people live 90 to 100 years without disabilities, because that's the important caveat. We can live 90 years old on a hospital bed or hooked up to tubes or unable to do the things that we really thought we would like to do for the rest of our lives. But to be able to do that for 90, 100 years without disabilities. And these places have in common that they eat mostly plants, that they move all the time, so their life is based on going places on foot, repairing their fences and helping their neighbors, walking to visit each other. It also means that they sleep well at night without pills, that they're not polluting their bodies with alcohol and cigarettes and drugs, and that they have low stress, because guess what? When you are healthy, when you have your health, you don't have that many worries, which is one of the highest points of worry of Western countries is their health and healthcare.
As evidence mounts that eating plant-based may allow us to age free from chronic disease, institutions like the Hayek Hospital in Lebanon have chosen to remove animal-based foods from their menus, becoming the first to offer only plant-based foods and breaking with the current business model of other medical centers.
Many years ago, processed meats such as bacon, turkey, deli slices, were put on the carcinogen list right next to cigarette smoking. Hospitals still serve that stuff in their cafeterias. How is that even possible?
It's really financial. On the first floor, they're feeding you the bacon and the turkey ham and the pepperoni. On the second floor, they're scoping you for colon cancer, and on the third floor, they're doing the surgery. So it's all a financially oiled machine.
Some school cafeterias have also made changes to their menus, like the ones in New York City public schools that implemented Vegan Fridays, a move that wasn't popular among all of the students.
What I've seen is that kids, when the schools offer something healthy, they won't take it. So really, it's really important to teach them to eat healthy at home.
Fortunately, it's sad because I remember I grew up when I was hungry during after school, I would grab an orange or a mango and I would eat fruit as my snacks. And I see some children nowadays that they don't even know what all of these fruits taste like. Even in our native lands, they're used to processed foods and fatty foods. So we're just disconnected from nature. And a lot of parents, they feel that they're busy, or maybe that they feel that whatever the kids are eating in school, it's what they want. They want to please the children, and so it's just swaying and the trend more towards eating unhealthy versus eating whole foods.
So I was in high school. I went to the doctor. In order to get into the soccer team, you have to go pass the physical exam. So I went to the doctor and they told me that I have like hypertension. I was like, even the doctor was surprised because he was like, oh, you are so young, you play a lot of soccer and other sports, and here, you have this. So he asked me the best way to do it is to cut some meat, soda, which is high in sodium. I start doing it, And from there, I started seeing like a better result. I went back to the doctor, and he's like, okay, we're seeing results. After 3 years, I hear about veganism, which is no meat at all, anything about like animal products. So I went into it, started doing it. It's been 5 years already. Last year I did my first competition in natural bodybuilding, which it went great for me, and now I'm still doing it, getting the natural muscles powered by plants.
So I've been vegan for 3 years. I started as a challenge because I do different challenges monthly. So I did that and I realized that I didn't need any meat anymore, really. Like, you have so many options nowadays, you can veganize everything.
At a vegan food festival, we met Erica Vargas, who says she noticed that when she stopped eating animal-based foods, her digestive problems went away. She says that despite her dietary change, she continues to enjoy her traditional dishes.
I'm a Peruvian who goes to Peruvian restaurants who nowadays have a lot of vegan or vegetarian options.
She says at home, you can slowly start to replace animal-based foods in the recipes you already love.
Made a normal lomo saltado, but instead of using the steak, I use mushrooms. I made papa a la huancaína, which is very known, but I veganize it also.
I think a lot of times people think that plant-based eating is really boring and it's really one-dimensional things. I think for me, plant-based eating is a lot about bringing in more nutrient-dense, alive foods. So it's not necessarily about whether or not you're a plant-based eater and whether or not you're totally vegan, but it's more about how you're looking at the food that you eat holistically and trying to eat more naturally and more according to how we evolved as humans.
Many restaurants already offer plant-based options, and if they don't have vegan dishes, you can put together your own plate ordering off the sides menu. As for the food you bring home, nutritionist Katia Galvis recommends getting organized before going shopping.
What do I have to have in my pantry to make this happen?
Well, yeah, I try to have the 4 main groups of foods. Like you see here, I have legumes, which are a good source of protein. I have grains, usually whole grains.
She recommends planning your menu to keep costs down and avoid wasting food. She says that those who think that eating healthy is expensive are not planning properly.
If you compare beans with a pound of meat, you will see that beans, rice, and vegetables are cheaper than meat and milk. So also you have to think of what you're buying. For example, if you start buying all these veggie meats, right, they are very expensive, very, very expensive. And a lot of people try to add those when they are transitioning, but they can get very expensive. We don't have to buy those foods, transition foods as I call them, and just buying the simple whole food without any processing, and you will, be saving a lot of money.
She says if you focus on unprocessed foods, in other words, foods that come from a plant like this, instead of this, you will save a lot of money at the store, and that's not all. In 2020, Americans spent $4.1 trillion on health care, 3 times what we spent in 2000.
If you keep eating processed food and heavy in meat and dairy, at the end or in the long run, you're going to end up paying for medications or for doctor visits or hospitalizations. So you have to look to long term, because the plant-based nutrition or food will help you keep you healthy and for a long time. So it's very important.
That's why it's more important than ever to start replacing pro-inflammatory and disease-causing foods with vegetables, roots, fruits, whole grains, legumes, seeds, and nuts. It's a way so many people have begun healing through food.